The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of Lexington Community Radio or its board of directors. The views expressed are solely those of the programmers.
You are listening to Off the Cuff. Now, here's your host, Adam Banks.
Welcome, everybody, to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks, coming at you live from Lexington, Kentucky. Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you for tuning in to WLXU 93.9 FM. In addition to listening on the radio, you can check out our Facebook live stream at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks, or you can download the RadioLex app on your smartphone device, or stream us from the website at radiolex.us to listen anywhere in the entire world. I am broadcasting from the Deborah Hensley Studios here at Radio Lex on North Limestone. It is August the 17th, 2023, 4 o'clock to be exact. We are live. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to another episode. It is feeling good outside, 81 degrees, which, you know, I always kind of like to start off talking a little bit about the weather, but I mean, you can't complain. The weather is nice and cool, especially for mid-August. But folks, let's get right into today's show. I have to start the show talking about a very interesting development that had come about. I don't know if anybody has seen the movie The Blind Side with Sandra Bullock. She won an Oscar for her role in that movie. But apparently the Blind Side story was all a lie. It was all pretty much fabricated, or at least the truth was stretched quite a bit. Now, I love a good movie based on a true story. There's a lot of good movies out there based on true stories, and The Blind Side is definitely one of the best, starring Sandra Bullock. It's even got Tim McGraw playing the dad in the movie. But the story is about Michael Oher. He is the former NFL star who used to play for Mississippi, and then he went, or it was Ole Miss, and then he went on and got drafted by the Vikings and had quite a career in the NFL. But he was adopted, apparently, by this family called the Toohey family. And he was taken in when he was just a young teenager because he was homeless. He was impoverished. He didn't have anywhere to go. So he was taken in by this family. So apparently the movie, everything it depicted in it was just kind of stretched, which is no surprise because Tinseltown out in Hollywood, they tend to do that quite a bit. So it says here that retired NFL star Michael Oher, whose supposed adoption out of grinding poverty by a wealthy white family was immortalized in the 2009 movie The Blind Side. He petitioned a Tennessee court document last Monday with allegations that a central element of the story was a lie coincised by the family to enrich themselves at his expense. It was a 14-page petition filed in Shelby County, Tennessee, probate court, and it alleges that Sean and Leanne Toohey, who took Oher into their home as a high school student, never adopted him. Instead, less than 3 months after Oher turned 18 in 2004, the petition says the couple tricked him into signing a document making them his conservators, which gave them legal authority to make business deals in his name. The petition further alleges that the Tooheys used their power as conservators to strike a deal that paid them and their two birth children millions of dollars in royalties from the Oscar-winning film. And it earned more than $300 million at the box office. And all of the kids and the Tooheys made money off of this movie. But apparently Michael Oher himself didn't make anything. Oher's petition asked the court to end the Tooheys' conservatorship and to issue an injunction barring them from using his name and likeness. Because apparently the Tooheys have made a career off of what they did for Michael Oher. Leanne Toohey, the mom from the Blind Side movie, the real-life mom. She's a motivational speaker. She's written books, and she goes around the country talking about what she did for her adopted son. And Michael Oher is saying, I'm sick of them profiting off of my name and likeness, when in reality, everything she is saying is a lie. It says here that there is some important legal distinctions. If Oher had been adopted by the Tuohys, he would have been a legal member of their family, and he would have retained power to handle his own financial affairs. But under the conservatorship that he signed, rather than being adopted, the conservatorship is what the Tuohys were pushing him forward to do. Under the conservatorship, Michael Oher surrendered that authority to the Tuohys, even though he was a legal adult with no physical or psychological disabilities. Because usually you go under a conservatorship if you've got some mental problems, you've got some physical problems, because a conservatorship is basically somebody taking care of your affairs for you because you're not able to. So the Tuohys kind of tricked Michael Oher into thinking he was getting adopted, but instead he was really signing a conservatorship, meaning he was giving up all rights and privileges of his own finances, his own career, to the Tuohy family. Quite scandalous, if you ask me. Michael Oher said the Tuohys insisted on signing conservatorship papers instead of adoption papers. The petition alleges that the Tuohys began negotiating a movie deal about their relationship with Michael Oher shortly after the 2006 release of the book The Blind Side. According to the legal filing, the movie paid the Tuohys and their children $225,000 each, plus 2.5% of the film's defined net proceeds. So Michael Oher eventually went on to become the 23rd overall pick in the 2009 NFL Draft, and Oher's court petition says he never received any money from the movie at all. So it's quite interesting that you grow up thinking something your whole life. You grow up thinking, okay, Michael Oher was this guy who was pulled out of poverty by this family who did him such a solid. But in reality, it was all fake. It was all a lie. As a matter of fact, it's almost very cruel at what the Tuohys did. Instead of adopting him, they made him sign conservatorship papers. Very unfortunate. It says, for years, Michael Oher has chafed at how The Blind Side depicted him, saying it hurt his football career and clouded how people view him. He said that based on the film, some NFL decision makers assumed he was mentally slow or lacked leadership skills. So in the film, Michael Oher is being taught how to play football by his supposed adopted mother. That's not true. He already knew how to play football. But in the movie, it depicts that she's the one that taught him how to play football. It kind of depicts him in the movie as kind of a dumb guy. But in reality, he's quite smart and quite the leader on the field. So he's saying that everything that was in that movie has been stretched, and a lot of it was fake. So a very interesting development. And to think that that family has been flossing up and down the streets from corner to corner, from city to city, from state to state, preaching about all the goodness that they've done for this young man. But in reality, they made millions off of this kid. Millions. Millions. It says here that because of his unstable housing situation, the Tuohys invited him to stay over at their place quite a bit. They encouraged him to address them as mom and dad, and they planned to adopt him, but ultimately never did. But instead, made him sign the conservatorship papers. Very scandalous, yet very sad. But it made me start thinking of other movies out there that are based on a true story that was actually a lie. Because think about how many movies exist out there that says based on a true story. Can you really believe that? Can you really believe that the movie is based on a true story? Because The Blind Side was based on a true story, and we're now finding out that it was a lie, that it was not based on a true story. The story was completely stretched. There's a lot of movies out there, so I started doing some digging, and I have found a couple of movies that I love, that I thought to be real, but was actually made up. So, for instance, The Pursuit of Happiness. The 2006 movie starring Will Smith, it's talking about Chris Gardner's rags to riches story. It's definitely real, but it stretches the truth on certain occasions. For instance, in the movie, he doesn't get paid for his internship, but in reality, he got paid a $1,000 stipend for that internship. In the movie, it's got him going broke and losing his house and becoming homeless because he was selling medical equipment. That's false. He did not go broke by selling medical equipment. It says in the movie that he went to his job interview after getting out of jail, and it depicts him going to the job interview straight out of getting out of jail. That's a lie. He didn't. He didn't get straight out of jail and go to his interview. That's false. It was just boosted up for the movie. They tried to make it look good for the movie. And actually, his son did not live with him the whole time that him and his wife was split. In fact, for the first few months, Chris Gardner said himself that he didn't even know where the location of his son was. So, and in the movie, the little boy was 4, but in reality, he was only 2. So there you go. You're going to watch The Pursuit of Happiness with a whole different set of eyes. Here's another movie, The Dallas Buyers Club, starring Matthew McConaughey. It's the true story of Texan Ron Woodruff, who was diagnosed with AIDS in the early 1980s, and he was back then it was a death sentence to get AIDS. So they didn't have the medication that they do now. So he was smuggling in medication from different countries to save himself. But there was a lot of things in that movie that was false. For instance, Ron Woodruff himself is depicted as a competitive rider in rodeos. In reality, he was not. His doctor in the movie, Jennifer Garner, Jared Leto in the movie, who plays his friend, who he won an Oscar for, they're both false. They're both fake people. They didn't really exist. They left out real people in the movie that they could have put in there, like his sister and his daughter, who were very influential in his life and played a very important role in his life, but instead they were replaced by fake characters. The Strangers is another movie that was not real. And if you look at the trailer or the poster of the Strangers movie, that was the 2008 horror film thriller, it says that the movie was inspired by true events. But it certainly was not. It says here that the poster for the 2008 Strangers insisted that it is inspired by true events, which led to rampant speculation among fans as to what those true events might be. Much of this attention had focused on the Ketty Cabin murders, a grisly quadruple homicide, which took place at a remote cabin in the California woods in 1981. But the director of the film says that the main inspiration for his story was actually the Charles Manson story, when Charles Manson would randomly go up to people's houses and have people that was in his cult kill them for no apparent reason. Because that's what The Strangers is about. Strangers showing up to your door to kill you for no apparent reason. And he said another thing that made him say on the movie poster that it was inspired by true events is because when he was a kid, he remembers specifically living in a remote house out in rural areas or a rural area. And he remembers getting a knock on his door, and the person at the door was asking if somebody that really didn't live there lived there. And if they were only doing that because they were knocking on people's doors, and whoever didn't answer, they would rob them. And he felt like that was a scary situation that he was in. So that inspired him to write that movie. Flight, starring Denzel Washington, the 2012 movie starring Denzel Washington. He's plays that character, Whip Whitaker, who was crashing in a plane. He was the pilot of a plane, and he was on cocaine, he was on alcohol, he was on all kinds of drugs, and he was flying the plane, but the plane malfunctioned, not because of his drug use, it just malfunctioned, but he still, being high as a kite, saved most people on board and the plane from exploding, and the plane still crashed, but it wasn't as bad thanks to the pilot. So the whole movie is about him. But here's what's interesting about it. Whip Whitaker, the pilot that Denzel Washington betrayed, was not a real person. He never even existed. So the Seoul crash scene, the beginning crash scene in the very beginning of the movie, the best part of the movie, it was based very loosely on an actual event. It wasn't real. So it was based loosely on an actual event, but not specifically that one. It was specifically talking about an Alaska airline flight 261, which happened in the year 2000. It says here that the plane's black box recording revealed that the pilots did indeed roll the plane upside down in order to try to pull it out of a nosedive, which is literally one of the two things in the film that it has depicted. It's one of the things the film's known for, is when he turned the plane upside down to save everybody on board. That actually happened in real life on another flight, but this whole situation was not real. And he did save everybody, most people on board, but everybody on board on Alaska Airlines, they died in the crash. They crashed in the ocean, and everybody on board was killed. So when you're watching a movie, don't just assume that just because it says based on a true story that it is really based on a true story, because we now know that a lot of things can be stretched. How they get away with it is they take one little small thing that was actually happening, and they just stretch it as far as they can take it. So when you read based on a true story, just take it with a grain of salt. But all right, folks, we're going to take our first break. Stick with us. We will be right back. You are listening to Off the Cuff with Adam Banks.
I wish you were here with me, walking on the beach in Hawaii, playing on the golden sand, looking at the ocean. Now I understand.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Last week on the show, we started a new segment that I said was going to be reoccurring for the next 5 weeks. And the segment was talking about the best unofficial state songs for each state in the country. So we did a whole segment before talking about the best state songs that are in the country. But these songs that I'm playing are the best written songs about that particular state. So there are 50 states in the country, and what I have been doing is going through each state in alphabetical order, and for each state, I am playing for the audience what I feel like is the best song written about that state. And I'm calling these the unofficial state songs. And last week, we covered Alabama all the way to Georgia. So we're doing 10 a week until we get finished. So we did the first 10 last week, and this week we'll do our next 10. And we left off with Hawaii on deck. And that's what this song you're hearing is right now. It's called Beach in Hawaii by Ziggy Marley. Ziggy Marley has maintained his family's beach-loving tradition throughout his career, especially on Beach in Hawaii. The Jamaican star not only shared his love for the island state on the track, but also made a guest appearance on the CBS reboot series Hawaii 5-0. You can't get no more Hawaiian than this song right here. Very Jamaican. It's got a very Jamaican sound, and of course his last name is Marley, so it's going to sound very Jamaican. But we do have a lot to get to. We do have just our next 10, and we're going to go in alphabetical order. So next up, folks, on my list, and I feel like this is the best song for this state, is Idaho. And the best song for Idaho is called Private Idaho by the B-52s. These artists are from Georgia, but they scored one of their best singles ever, talking about the state of Idaho. Now, this song was released in the 1980s, but in 2017, band member Cindy Wilson told Idaho's Sandpoint Reader, "It's always fun to come back to Idaho I just like the beat of the sound. Idaho, which you would assume is a very boring state, which it is. I've been there. Actually, no, where was I at? Iowa. Kind of get those confused. But Idaho, it just seems like a very boring state, but this song is nothing but exciting. It's not boring at all. All right, next up on the list is Illinois. And the song that we're going to be playing for Illinois, which I feel like is the best unofficial state song for the state, the best song ever written about the state. This song is called Illinois by Brett Eldredge. This song has over 2.9 million streams on Spotify. Brett Eldredge brings a healthy dose of home state pride to his anthem, Illinois. He's from Illinois, and this track was in fact penned by Eldredge along with his co-writers after an afternoon cruising through some of the rural farming communities near the singer's hometown.
Beyond that wild blue yonder, when I get lost in the north.
All right, next on the list is Indiana. So the best song written about Indiana is by the Jackson 5, and it's called Going Back to Indiana. And this was released on the Jackson's 5 third album. And it says here that you guys obviously probably know already that the Jackson family was from the state of Indiana, Gary, Indiana, as a matter of fact. And Michael Jackson was only 11 years old when he sang this song, Going Back to Indiana. The whole Jackson family, like I said, grew up in Gary, Indiana, but studio recordings and touring kept them away from home a lot, so they didn't get to spend much time in Indiana. Many songs centered on Indiana are about missing the state's beautiful landscapes, rivers, and cities. Going Back to Indiana takes... it's a good song about the whole state. Going Back to Indiana. I wonder if my mom likes this song because that's originally where she's from, Bloomington, Indiana. Definitely the best state song written about Indiana. All right, next on the list is the state of Iowa. And this song is called Update from Iowa by Smitty Spread Love. And unlike most songs on this list, this is a newer song released in 2020. And it also stands out because this is the only rap song on the list.
2020 really trying us. On this road to riches, I pray God don't let our tires bust. Stimulus in my savings, but numbers still ain't high enough. Funny how I left to work a job, but I'm fired up. This update from Iowa. Ain't been on the gram, I feel my page just ain't loud.
In the opening lines, the artist Smitty says that he can no longer drive Uber because of the pandemic, so he and his family get in a car and drive to Iowa seeking something better. Unfortunately, being in the center of the country doesn't keep him from seeing and experiencing all of the chaos around the nation. The song describes many of the struggles faced by Americans in 2020 from COVID-19. Everything from job losses to struggling against police brutality.
Update from Iowa. What you think I'm doing all this driving for? Update from Iowa. Update from Iowa. I've been cruising through the U.S. I never thought I'd see this side of...
All right, next on the list is a song by Jody Messina, and it's called You're Not in Kansas Anymore, and this is the best unofficial state song written about the state of Kansas. Now, this song was written by Tim Nichols and Zach Turner, but recorded by Jody D. Messina. This single, released in July 1996, charted as a second entry on Joe DeMessina's album. The song reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot Country Singles and Tracks chart. Billboard magazine reviewed the song favorably, calling the production right on the mark and saying it provides a strong framework for Messina's personality. The hook is catchy and Messina's delivery is energetic. A great song about the state. All right, folks, you know what's coming up next. It's the state of Kentucky, and the song we got for the state of Kentucky is Blue Moon of Kentucky.
Blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining.
And this is by Elvis Presley, the icon, the king of rock and roll. This has over 2.5 million plays on Spotify. The king of rock and roll ascended his throne in the bluegrass state after recording his version of Bill Monroe's Blue Moon of Kentucky in 1954. Elvis Presley and his band were struggling through a recording session when the bass player Bill Black began playing the song in imitation of Monroe. The rest of the band joined in, and producer Sam Phillips encouraged them to keep it and to actually record it and put it on a record. Hence, why we have Blue Moon of Kentucky by Elvis Presley now. A great song about this state.
Different. That's a pop song now,
All right, next on the list is the state of Louisiana, and this song has to be the best unofficial state song by Louisiana. It's called Louisiana Saturday Night by Mel McDaniel.
Kick off your shoes and you throw them on the floor. Dance in the kitchen till the morning light. Louisiana Saturday Night.
Louisiana Saturday Night is a song written by Bob McDill and recorded by American country music artist Mel McDaniel. It was released in March of 1981 as the third single from McDaniel's 1980 album, I'm Countryfied. The song was originally sung by Don Williams in his 1977 album Country Boy. Louisiana Saturday Night can be heard before every Louisiana State University football game played in Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This song is adored by fans not only for its easy-to-dance to beat, but also because of a long-standing tradition that the Tigers fare better both at home and on Saturday evenings.
Louisiana Saturday Night.
You hear this song in the background of LSU games if you're watching them on TV, and the fans love it. They play it before, they play it after, they play it during. They love this anthem.
Well, you get down
It's definitely better than what Kentucky plays at their games. It's a party, it's a party, it's a party. Like, that's so stupid. I mean, that was cool the first year we had that at football games, but I don't know why we made Waka Flocka part of our Kentucky tradition. It makes no sense.
Dance in the kitchen till the morning light. Louisiana Saturday Night.
All right, the next state on the list is the state of Maine. And the song that I picked for the state of Maine, which I feel like is the best state, or the best song for this state, it's called Going to Maine by the Mountain Goats. Mountain Goats songwriter John Darnell wrote his song Going to Maine before he ever set foot in the state. He grew up in California and a little bit on the East Coast. He had always been to all kinds of exotic places, but he said that the place that he loved the most was the state of Maine.
Let's beat the retreat. Let's hop on the plane. Let's get out of here. Let's go to Maine. Someone knows what's...
He said when he visited Maine, he loved it so much he moved there and never looked back. He still lives there today, or at least he did up until his death. I say up until his death like he's dead. I don't know if he's dead or not, but I know he lived there for most of his life.
Let's hop on the plane. Let's get out of here. Let's go to Maine. Let's go to Maine.
And then finally, folks, on the list, the last state that we will be talking about today is the state of Maryland. And the song that I picked for Maryland as the best unofficial state song is called Together in Maryland by Tony Cavallo. Now, this is a catchy rock and roll song. Together in Maryland is one that makes you feel happy to be alive in the state of Maryland. The lyrics describe the sunrise in the free state and how the singer and his partner spend time on the beach together. Being so in love with each other, Cavallo believes all they need is to be together in their home state in Maryland to enjoy living in such a beautiful state.
But I'll be home soon in your arms in Maryland before too long. Looking forward to holding your hand on the OC boardwalk. Watch that sunrise on the ocean, share some tender talk. Hey, it's good to be alive under the clear blue sky.
And there you go, folks. That is the next 10 songs that we covered, the next 10 states. So we covered all the way from Hawaii to Maryland. So we've so far covered 20 states. We've got 30 to go, and we'll get to our next 10 next week. Hopefully you enjoyed those 10 as much as you did the last 10. And it's only going to get better as we proceed. But folks, we're going to take a quick break. Stick with us. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Last week on the show, I introduced a new recurring segment on the show that we're going to be having going forward for the rest of the summer. And I'm talking about our deep dives into iconic summer blockbusters. So I felt like that since it was the summer, we needed to have a summer-themed segment where we do this segment every week for the rest of the summer. Last summer, we did one-hit wonders, and every week on the show, I would go through the best one-hit wonders of that particular decade. Well, this year, for this summer, on Off the Cuff, I felt like that a good theme for this summer would be to talk about the best iconic summer blockbusters that have ever existed. And what I wanted to do was take one iconic summer blockbuster from the past and do a deep dive into it. So last week, we talked about the biggest summer blockbuster of all time, Jaws. It went over well. So this week, it's time to do a deep dive into another iconic summer blockbuster. This would be our second feature. And this week, if you can't already tell what movie I'm going to talk about based off the music, I'm going to be talking about the best Batman movie ever made. And that was 2008, The Dark Knight, starring Christian Bale. It is my favorite superhero movie of all time. I feel like it is the best superhero movie of all time. But in 2008, The Dark Knight took the world by storm. Now, there's been a ton of movies, a ton of TV shows talking about Batman, and it's about Batman. But no movie has been as good as The Dark Knight in 2008. It was a part of the 3-movie trilogy, and the first movie was Batman Begins, the second movie was The Dark Knight, and the third movie was The Dark Knight Rises. Well, the second movie in that trilogy was the best Batman movie ever created. It was released on July the 18th, 2008. It says here that The Dark Knight is a superhero film directed by Christopher Nolan from a screenplay co-written by his brother Jonathan, based on the DC Comics superhero Batman. It is the sequel to Batman Begins, which was released in 2005, and the second installment in the Dark Knight trilogy. The plot follows the protagonist Batman, Police Lieutenant James Gordon, and District Attorney Harvey Dent, who form an alliance to dismantle organized crime in Gotham City. Their efforts are derailed by the Joker, a crazy mastermind who seeks to test how far Batman will go to save the city from chaos. The ensemble cast includes Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Heath Ledger, Gary Oldman, Aaron Eckhart, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Morgan Freeman. So let me just first of all talk about why it's the best Batman movie ever made. Number one, it's got the best person portraying Batman that's ever done it, Christian Bale. Say what you want to about the guy. He was the best guy to ever put on the suit. Yes, he was better than Michael Keaton. He was better than Val Kilmer. He was better than the little Twilight actor. He was better than Ben Affleck. He was better than the original Batman, Adam West. Christian Bale was the best Batman. Now, he gets a lot of flack for his voice, the I'm Batman voice. But how else is he supposed to talk? How do you want Batman to sound? The cast is another reason it made it so phenomenal. Morgan Freeman, Heath Ledger, the Joker in the movie, portrayed by Heath Ledger, made the movie iconic. Because of the Joker in this movie is the whole reason why we have another Joker movie. It was because of that character, the Joker in that movie, is, I feel like, one of the biggest reasons for the success of the film. People wanted to go watch it to see the Joker and see it portrayed by Heath Ledger. The movie made over $1 billion worldwide at the box office. That's a ton of money. Here's a little trivia about The Dark Knight. Despite having a great experience on Batman Begins, Katie Holmes decided against taking on the role of Rachel Dawes again because she wanted to star alongside Diane Keaton and Queen Latifah in the crime comedy Mad Money. That movie was a complete flop. It scored a 22% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and it only made $26 million. $26 million compared to $1 billion. That's a bad decision. She decided not to play Rachel in the sequel of this movie because she wanted to do another movie. Well, that was a bad call on her part. Here's something very interesting. In the scene where the Joker, it says in the scene when the Joker crashes Bruce's party, Michael Caine, who played Alfred, was originally supposed to have a line when the elevator arrives, but he was so spooked by Heath Ledger's appearance that he didn't speak. Michael Caine referred to him as terrifying. Think about that. The first time he ever seen Heath Ledger, the first time he ever met him, the first time he ever seen him, it was on set during filming. And it was during that particular scene when Heath Ledger showed up on set that Michael Caine met him for the first time. And he had a line to say in the movie. He was supposed to say something, but he was so freaked out by Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker that he couldn't even speak of his line. He couldn't even think of it because he was so spooked. And Heath Ledger did so phenomenal playing that role as the Joker in the movie. And I've pulled up the clip that I am just got finished describing. This is the clip where the Joker really gets introduced for the first time in the movie. And this is the scene where Michael Caine had a line that he never did say because he was so freaked out by Heath Ledger's performance. Take a listen at the clip. This particular clip is when the Joker crashes Bruce's party and he goes up to Bruce's girlfriend, Rachel, who is played by Maggie Gyllenhaal. And he starts to, well, just take a listen at the clip yourself.
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them? Come here. Hey. Look at me. So I had a wife, beautiful, like you, who tells me I worry too much, who tells me I ought to smile more, who gambles and gets in deep with the sharks. Hey, one day they carve her face. We have no money for surgeries. She can't take it. I just want to see her smile again. I just want her to know that I don't care about the scars. So, I stick a razor in my mouth and do this to myself. And you know what? She can't stand the sight of me. She leaves. Now I see the funny side. Now I'm always smiling. A little fight new. I like that. And you're gonna love me.
And then Batman pops up and the Joker and him get into a little bit of a scuffle. But that was just a small clip of Heath Ledger's portrayal as the Joker, and we all ultimately know what happened to Heath Ledger. He died right after making this movie. This was actually his last movie he ever did, and he just finished filming the movie when he passed. Heath Ledger designed the look of the Joker himself using makeup he bought from a local shop. Christopher Nolan, the director, was so impressed that he tasked the movie's makeup team to recreate it themselves. The mayor of Batman, Turkey, yes, that's actually a real place, tried to sue Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan for using the name Batman in the film. The mayor said, "There's only one Batman in the world, and it's here." Well, they obviously lost the case because Batman the comic book has been around for centuries. Before Aaron Eckhart was cast as Harvey Dent, other actors were almost cast. Those actors included Ryan Phillippe, Mark Ruffalo, Matt Damon, and Hugh Jackman. The Italian actor who dubbed over Heath Ledger's lines in the film was the son of the guy who dubbed over Jack Nicholson's lines in Batman, the movie made in the late 80s. Could you imagine that family Thanksgiving? Those two brothers at a Thanksgiving table? That would be terrifying. One of the Joker's creepiest tics in the film was his frequent lip licking and cheek sucking. This wasn't intentional, but rather Heath Ledger's genuine reaction to the uncomfortable prosthetics, but he was told to keep it for the character. During the ambitious Joker SWAT chase scene, an IMAX camera was destroyed. You might think that's no big deal, except that it was one of the only IMAX cameras in the world at the time. There was only 4, and that one got broken. Each camera cost about $250,000 at the time. Within 2 days of the release, it was already ranked as the greatest film of all time by users on IMDb. It's now in 3rd. Christian Bale admits that he wasn't allowed to actually ride the Batpod, which was the little motorcycle that he rode. It was deemed too dangerous. He said they needed me to be in one piece to finish the movie. And that was their excuse of why he couldn't actually drive the bike. Other actresses were considered for the role of Rachel Dawes after Katie Holmes decided she wanted to go do Mad Money instead. The other actresses that were almost cast as Rachel was Isla Fisher, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Emily Blunt, and Rachel McAdams. So there is a few little trivia for The Dark Knight, a huge summer blockbuster. I remember when that movie was released, you could not find a ticket to get into the theater because that was before streaming got huge. So you couldn't release it on a streaming platform. You had to go to the movies to watch it. But people were buying tickets weeks in advance. But I finally snagged a ticket and had to sit in the middle of a bunch of people in the theater, and it was only in big theaters. And it was humongous. And what a turnout in every theater across the country for this movie. And still to this date, I don't remember a summer blockbuster in my lifetime that's been as big as The Dark Knight. Now, I'm talking about in my lifetime. And there's been a ton of movies that have been considered summer blockbusters, but I don't think none bigger than The Dark Knight. Keep in mind, the Jaws movie was in the 70s. Dark Knight was in 2008. So it definitely was probably the biggest blockbuster movie of my lifetime. But that, folks, is the second feature that we are going to discuss when we're talking about iconic summer blockbusters. Hopefully you're enjoying these. I definitely am. But what we're going to do, folks, now is take Off the Cuff's Song of the Week break. And the song that I'm going to play for you folks is a song that reminds me a lot of my high school experience because this song came out my freshman year of high school. And I remember listening to this song so many times when it come out. And it's called Big as the Sky by AM60. So, roll down them windows and enjoy the song, and we'll be back. love a song that brings back nostalgia. I wonder why that is. I wonder what it is about nostalgia that makes people go crazy, that makes people love it. I think that whenever we're reminded of something from the past, it just naturally makes us feel good, especially when it comes from childhood. And it took me back when I heard the song on the radio, and I was like, wow, I hadn't heard that song in forever, and I'm going to make it Off the Cuff's Song of the Week. So it was kind of an off-the-beaten-path song. Not a lot of people heard of it, but it was still a good one. All right, folks, we still got one more segment to go. Stick with us. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Cuff. Adam Banks here with you. Last segment of the hour. It is now time for me to reveal Off the Cuff's quote of the week. Now, this week's quote does not have an author. This is an unknown Greek proverb. So you've probably heard this quote many, many times in your life, and it's hard to pin down an actual author of who created it. But the quote of the week is this: "The grass is not always greener on the other side." The grass is not always greener on the other side. A lot of the times, folks, we think that over that fence is a pasture of greener grass, and it's going to feel better over there. It's going to look better over there. Everything is going to be happier over there. But when you get over there, you realize that it's not as good as what it was like on the other side of the fence of where you already was. I think we as human beings, we naturally think that going to the other side of the fence is always going to be better. But it's not. And you might be in that situation right now in your life. You might think that you want to switch to another job. You might think that you want to go and stray from one relationship to another because you think the grass is greener on the other side. You think it's going to be better. And then when you get there, you realize you actually had it pretty good. And you were better off where you originally were. It's such a simple quote, but it's a true quote, and one that you should really hold dear to your heart and soul. The grass is not always greener on the other side. No matter how much you think it may be, just know that it most of the time is not. Now, I'm not saying that it's not always the case. You might cross that fence and realize that the grass was greener. But for the most part, the grass is not always greener on the other side. So I think the takeaway of this quote is to step back, appreciate what you have, look deep into what you got before you cross over to the other side, because sometimes once you cross over to the other side, it's too late to ever go home. They say once you go home, you can never really go back. So keep in mind, the grass is not always greener on the other side. But folks, that pretty much wraps up another episode of Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. If you liked what you heard today, you'll probably like our previous episodes. We release all episodes on podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you stream your favorite podcast. You can follow me on social media at The Adam Banks. You can follow the show on social media at Off the Cuff with Adam Banks. We release new episodes every Thursday from 4 to 5 right here on WLXU 93.9 FM, which means I'll be back same time, same place. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Adam Banks, and this is Off the Cuff. I'll catch you down the road.